Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and you're watching Glenda's Dragon's Den. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who continues to support the show by sharing, by liking, by watching, of course. And don't forget to subscribe. This way, you will get notifications of any future shows, events, etc. Um, Today, on this beautiful day that we have, and I don't care if it's snowing, if it's sun shining, if it's windy, if it's raining, it's a beautiful day. You're all here alive, we're all here breathing, and we still have a lot to be thankful for. So, on this beautiful day, as I stated before, I want to welcome my guest, Patricia Walls. And let's just ask her how about herself? How did she grow up? How did she get to come here? When did she meet her teams? And if she's like me, is she spunky with them or is she just kind of listens to them?
I'm an Aries. I'm spunky. I was born,
I mean, I'm a Gemini. That's why I asked.
and that one of the things that I posted on Facebook recently was that realizing that my birthday is March 21st, so it's like barely past Pisces, and so sometimes I don't know whether or not I want to cry or just burn everything up, you know. So my team is sort of like that, is that sometimes I follow their direction and I'm so nice and I'm so naive. And at other times I'm stomping my feet and screaming and saying, why? And, when are you going to do this? And you promised me. And then I realize they don't have time. There's no time in that dimensional reality. And so whenever they tell me soon, it's going to happen very soon, and it's 22 years later.
I know.
And so my what I call them the beings, but that's changed lately too.
Mhm.
But and so I think that I'm probably a great source of entertainment for them, actually, because so I have this agreement with uh, whoever they are. I
Mhm.
have this agreement because I am what I'm textbook claircognizant, textbook, and it took me a long time to figure that out. But so in my genetic ancestry, my maternal grandfather was wide open psychically. I don't know that much about my father's people, but my maternal grandfather used to tell us stories about ghosts. In his time, which was in the 1800s, so in his time, he walked from place to place to find work.
Mhm.
There was no car. I mean, there were cars, but not for him. We
Okay.
were poor. And so he would walk from town to town to find work. And he would stay in abandoned houses because, I mean, who can afford a hotel, whatever. And so he would tell us stories about talking with the spirits that lived there in those houses. I mean, that's how I grew up. And,
Mhm.
um, and so I don't, and I was always connected in, I was always talking with the land, the animals, and I don't remember any of my cousins ever doing that, but I mean, it's genetic. Surely they had it, right?
Right.
And none of them still talk about anything psychic or, woo woo or metaphysical. I'm the only, I'm the black sheep in the family. So,
It's a growing group. Yes.
so, uh, so I grew up this way, the weird one. And in my 20s, I decided to start looking up my what I was really about as far as what path to follow, I guess you would say. I was trying to decide what path to follow because my mom didn't, she was a single parent and she didn't make us go to church. I did go to church with my cousins, but it wasn't mandatory. And so I was looking for where I belonged, and I found some people who were doing psychic development classes, and um, I found people who were doing Native Americans, neo shamanism. We're going to put it that way. I
Right.
think that's the way to say it. So I found those groups, and I started to get some kind of template, some kind of focus for my gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Words, I started letting other people tell me what my gifts should have been and how they should be used. First mistake, but and so I in that's where I found that little label called claircognizant, because I found that I just knew things. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew things. I didn't see spirit. I didn't hear spirit. I didn't smell spirit. Although there's an although, because my belief or my awareness is that we're born with all of those gifts, right?
Yes.
But that we very often just focus in on one. And so the one that I use the most is claircognizance, because I have seen full body apparitions. I have, and I still, I smell
Mm-hmm.
cigarette smoke or cologne every once in a while. So that one is there. That, you know, clairsentience.
Sentient.
Yeah.
Clairsentient. Yeah.
Mhm. And I do hear things every once in a
Mm-hmm.
while that aren't
Right.
really third dimensional. And so, I mean, I think that we have all of those, but all that to say, my primary way of perceiving is claircognizance. And that's not fun, because you have to learn how to trust that you know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's no physical proof. And so when I started doing readings for people, when I started charging people for what I do, I had to I had to step up a little bit. It was no longer just off the cuff. If you're going to
Right.
charge someone, you better know what you're doing. And so I had to make these little tiny rules with my guides and helpers. And one of them was I needed them to throw in words every once in a while that I wasn't familiar with, because that would be the cue that I was actually channeling, that I was actually receiving from outside of my third dimensional egoic way of perceiving.
Mm-hmm.
So they do that, and every time that they do it, I have a little giggle, because they'll throw in a word, and I'll have this momentary, what the heck is that? I've never heard of that word, and so I'll Google it to see if it's accurate in what I'm doing right this second. And
Right.
so yeah, it becomes a little game with me and the team. And so I did want to share something with people that has recently occurred for me, and probably I'm finding it's happening with a lot of people, especially people who are actively working on raising their consciousness, and doing their what they call shadow work, and and trying to become better at what they are. And so at, as long as I could remember, I would hear, it's like being in a busy restaurant, you know
Mm-hmm.
24/7. That's what 24/7, that's what I'm hearing. And so I learned and for someone who says she's claircognizant, but I'm not hearing them so much as I'm aware of them,
Right.
right? And so I just learned to work with that. And I thought everybody did. And um, and so it was very hard for me to be in physical third dimensional crowds because I've got this and then I've got this, and there was no peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not long ago, and I'm horrible with time, but in the last year, I found that it got quiet, and I had been working, all of my guidance. I said it was coming from, I called them the beings,
Mm-hmm.
because again, they were talking, a million of them, but the ideas came as, one voice, the information, and so I just called them the beings. I stopped trying to say this guide or this
Right.
extraterrestrial or this animal. I just started saying the beings are telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when it got really quiet, I thought, oh, this is different, and where did they go? Where did everyone go? And I have I've always been able, and it's so funny because my psychic friends say this is impossible, but I've always been able to channel for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been able to go in and ask questions and get answers. And then I would have readings with my family, my psychic family, and they would confirm what I already knew because
Mm-hmm.
I always questioned that I really knew what I knew. And so all of a sudden I couldn't do that anymore because there was no one there to answer me. And so when I finally went deep inside and had the WTF moment, you know, am I not doing the work? Am I
Yeah.
not getting enough of myself? What's going on? Where did you guys go? I don't deserve you anymore. But the answers that came was that humanity itself, because of all of the healing, all of the work that we're doing, and because of the um, caliber. They're using the word caliber. I love it when
Mm-hmm.
they throw those in. So the caliber of humanity that's coming in now is coming in at a higher vibration, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing all of us old timers up just a notch as well.
Right.
And so, what I was told with was that the guides, the helpers, are no longer necessary for some of us, for most of us,
Mm-hmm.
doing this work anyway, because we are now connected straight into our oversoul, working up to our monad. And so it's not necessary to have that outside help anymore. We're,
Mm-hmm.
although then there was that belief that our guides and helpers are only higher aspects of us anyway,
Right.
that there's nothing outside of us. But it was just so funny that it was like, where'd you guys go? You moved the party and I wasn't invited. What
Yeah.
happened? You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted you, or they wanted me to share that with everyone because I am having some of my clients have come to me and said, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not hearing the guidance anymore. The guidance isn't there. What do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I know it is. It is very strange to have that what I call the void. I'm like, come on, I need somebody to argue with, and I don't want to argue with me. So, but they do make a guest appearance for me every once in a while, just to let me know they're still drinking. Uh, I'm still causing them enough stress, but
Yeah.
no, it is getting quieter.
Hmm.
And as far as the younger generations coming in at high vibration, I could say that with experience from my grandkids,
Yeah.
they're definitely like you could see it in their eyes, you could feel it, and they could just they you give them an electronic and they know how to work it, and you're like, it took me 20 days of straight classes to just get to that point, and you're already like without anything. And it's like, okay, that's the way it should be. But, still, it's like, oh,
Yeah, the joke is if you want to know how to do something, call a 3-year-old.
yes,
You
my
know,
knows
yeah,
my granddaughter knows more
yeah,
than I do. And I'm like,
they'll fix it for you right now.
yeah,
You know, no hesitation.
no,
Um,
no.
yeah, so I went from through all of those classes that most people are doing.
Hmm.
I went through all the classes of Reiki and sacred activations. I became um, advanced practitioner and teacher in sacred activations, which is one of my favorite tools, by the way. And
Hmm.
also emotrance and energy EFT, another of my most valuable tools, and hypnosis, and then along the way, the red road, of course, and my Celtic Celtic tradition. So all of it comes into play, though,
Hmm.
because it helps you to really figure out who you are and how you work, and gets rid of all of the distortions. So I've spent all of these years doing that, getting, learning. Um, and the funny thing about when you take a class, a lot of us, you take a class because it's a way to earn money.
Hmm.
Most everybody that I know that takes a class, a healing modality, their sole purpose is to put another tool in their box so that they can earn money. But
Hmm.
but the universe's sense of humor is when you take a class, you do work on yourself,
Yeah.
you know. And so
Hmm.
that's the universe's sense of humor is that, oh, you don't think that you need any healing. Let me throw you in this 3-day class that's been dubbed the snot purge and puke fest. You know, when so what happened for me was I there's no mistakes, but I happened across this. What was I asking? I was having some chest pain, not the kind of chest pain that you go to the doctor for, but like muscle soreness.
Hmm.
It was really odd, and the doctors couldn't. They said I'd strained a muscle in my chest, and I in my shamanic days, I
Hmm.
learned shifting about shifting someone's assemblage point, right?
Hmm.
Using a crystal in their way. You used a crystal. And there is a book that I found about it by John Well. I think it's Whale. And I don't remember the name of the book, but anyway, it's about shifting consciousness with crystals. Amazing book if you guys can find it. I don't even know if it's still in print, but um, so in the class that I received, the neo shamanism, in the class that I received, they taught us how to shift someone else's assemblage point, right?
Hmm.
But they didn't teach us how to do it for ourselves, because the method that they used, you would have to be a contortionist to do it for yourself, and it's just not possible, you know, because there's holding the crystal back here, and
Right.
unless you're a contortionist, you don't do it. And so I thought, okay, well, what do I do now? And that's actually, so I started Googling, because that's how you find out anything that you want to find out.
Right.
And I Googled shifting the assemblage point, and just for yourself. That's how I did it. And I, I was, I was given this website, Dragon Rising Publishing. And I thought, the heck is that? So when it came up, the first book that came up was Emotrance. And
Mhm.
I looked at the book and I looked at the description and I said, that's not what I asked for, you know? And so I, went through this a couple of times and it kept coming back and kept coming back. And I thought, okay, I'm listening. What
Uh-huh.
it about this book that you want me to know? Because this is not what I was asking for.
Right.
And it did turn out that Dragon Rising was the publisher for this John
Okay.
Well book.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean that was the internet's way of, not spirit, but the internet's way of getting me there.
Mm-hmm.
But so I downloaded this book, this emo trance book, because I'm an Aries and I don't want to wait for a physical book. And so
Yep. I'm
I
a Gemini.
downloaded this book, and I printed it off and at work, of course, don't tell anybody. And on my lunch, on my lunch, I was reading this book, and because I'm an Aries, I never read a full book. I just like, you know, there's this sentence and this sentence and this sentence, and they all make a complete book. And so as I was reading this book, I was I was in a crowded cafeteria, and as I was reading this book, I was going, "What? This is crazy." I was using a lot of the F words. This is crazy. What is this? And how did they know this? And because everything that she had written was what I already knew,
Mm-hmm.
but she had written it,
Right.
right? And I'm like, this is crazy. And I decided that, and it's a healing modality called emotrance, and I decided that I wanted to learn this, that I wanted to learn how to use it for myself and for others. And so, following the website, I searched for a teacher, and the founder of emotrance is in England, and there were no U.S. Well, was there? I don't think that there was anybody in the U.S. teaching it at the time. And so I contacted him and said, she said, "Oh, I'm actually going to travel to San Diego to do a class, and you can sign up for that one." And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to San Diego, but okay. And so I signed up for it, and she messaged me a couple of weeks later and said, "That class didn't make. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to refund your money." She's, for her to travel from the UK, she had to
Right.
have a specific number of students. And
Right.
so,
Right.
so I wrote her back and I said, "Have you ever thought about coming to Texas?" And she was like, "No." So I asked her, "What would it take to get you to come to Texas?" And so she told me how many students
Right.
I think she needed 10. And she said, "I have 5 that had already signed up. Maybe I could get them to come to Texas." Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I said, "Okay." And I called a lot of my friends and said, "We're taking this class." and and this is the number, this is the link that you need to register. It wasn't cheap. It was not cheap. It was
I love how you should say we're taking this class. Not even a choice for me.
it was a couple of $1,000s. It was not
Ooh.
cheap.
Okay.
And so and and so again, because I'm an Aries, I can't just do it this much. I've got to do it this much. And so I signed up for the teacher portion. So there's the introduction, practitioner, advanced practitioner, and then teacher,
Right.
4 levels.
Mhm.
So she agreed, since she was coming this far, to give us um, the crash course. And so 3, might have been 4 days. So in 4 days, I went from introduction to teacher, and then I started teaching it. And it was so widely accepted, and just people were hungry for it. And but we honestly dubbed it the Snot Purge and Puke Fest, because because it's working with your emotions,
Right.
right? Your stuck emotions. Um, and there was some actual vomiting
Purging.
involved. Yeah, for some people, because the emotions were just that that big.
Right.
And so there was a lot of crying, so the snot. But but that modality is just amazing. I don't teach it anymore because I don't teach anybody else's systems, right?
Right.
But I talk about it, I promote it, encourage people to take the course, but and I use it in my practice. So I have a few tools that I really enjoy using, and hypnosis is one of those. I use hypnosis because at one point I had been led to a book, um, Life Between Lives. I think it's Michael Newton.
I believe so.
I've been led, yeah, I've been led to that book, and the amount of information that a person can get was so immense that, again, I want to know this. I want to learn this. I want to be able to do this for other people because I want to heal the world. And so I couldn't. I don't think at the time I could find a class on that technique of
Hmm.
hypnosis, but I took a course in hypnosis, and I incorporated his methods, and I did that for a few years, and then well, probably 10 years actually, and so then I was led to Dolores Cannon during a psychic reading. Actually, I was having a psychic reading with someone who did not know me, and in the reading she said, okay, she said, they won't leave me alone until I ask you this. She said, do you know Dolores Cannon? And I went, no. And she said, well, she's not in body anymore, she's in spirit, and she's telling me that you need to take her course. And I said, okay. And of course, after the reading I googled it and found out what she was and what she offered, and so I did. I took it to level 2, and I did that work for about 7 years. And so it's taking people through past life regressions and getting them deep enough into trance that they can go past their egoic self and
Hmm.
obtain answers from. So Dolores's way was contact the subconscious, and every time that I asked to speak to the subconscious, they would come, but they were surly. They would answer sometimes if they were in a good mood, and this was the client channeling this information. So it wasn't me saying they don't want to answer right now.
Right.
It was the client saying she doesn't need to know that right now, you know. And I found that most of my time was negotiating with the subconscious to get answers for that person, because the client, i.e. the subconscious, would say she doesn't need to know that right now. And and so I thought, well, she's just paid me this amount of money, and I'm going
Hmm.
to get answers for her. And so I had to start negotiating like you would with a 2-year old. I would say, you know, this is very important information for her growth, her spiritual growth, her healing, and I'm sure that she would appreciate it if you would give her this information. And sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But I got so tired of negotiating with the subconscious that, so at one point, honest to goodness, okay, at one point I said, I played the Who's Your Boss card.
That's something we gotta do. Oh
I
Lord.
could not take it anymore. You know, I felt like I was wasting these people's money. I mean, they'd had past life regressions. It wasn't a total waste,
Right,
but
but
you can do a past life regression without doing a QHHT. But
right.
and so at one point I played the Who's Your Boss card, and I said, how many levels of consciousness are there? You know,
Right.
and and at the time, this what this client channeled was, well, there's the human. And I said, okay, and they weren't going to tell me anything else. And I said, okay, well, because I was talking to the subconscious.
Right.
what's above the human ego? And they said, subconscious, me. And I said, okay, what's above you? You know, without trying to make it mad, what what level is above you? And the answer was higher self. I think this was like 10 years ago, and so it was like higher self or something like that. And I said, okay. I said, may I speak to Susan's higher self? All the time, trying not to laugh, you know. But I said, may I speak to Susan's higher self?
It's like the supervisor. Can I speak to the supervisor, please?
Yeah, that's what I was doing basically. And so so there was a moment's lapse, and then I heard, "We're here," and I went. I think I just heard the angels sing. I just heard the chorus of angels go, "Ah, we're here." You Oh my goodness!
Mm,
And so, and the caliber of answers that I got from that point on, okay, the calibers of answers that I got from that point onward, go away, were entirely different
right.
and of a higher vibration. And
Hmm.
so from then on, it was like, we're not talking to the subconscious. I don't know who Dolores was talking to that gave her all this amazing information,
Right.
but none of them want to talk to me. So I got to go a bit higher, you know. So that became one of my favorite tools, and from there, light language came in. Well, no, the Hall of Records, the Hall of Records.
Hmm.
So I had been doing the Hall of Records since what year? I'm horrible with years. Since like the 90s, I had been playing in the Hall of Records and
Right.
didn't know what it was. And I was taking people there on journeys to look at their contracts, agreements, whatever. And about 10 years or so ago, I kept hearing, you need to share this knowledge, you need to share this information. And so I, I wasn't writing books at that point, and so I went internet searching who's talking about the Hall of Records, and I found Edgar Casey, just talking about the physical building beneath the Sphinx.
Hmm.
And the only other Hall of Records references were um, architectural, you know,
Hmm.
and there was nothing else on the Hall of Records. And I thought, why isn't anyone talking about this? Because the universe doesn't give just one person information.
Right.
The information is there in it's there for everyone. It's just who's listening, who's got their ear on at the moment.
Right.
And so I knew that I wasn't the only one who had received this information and was using it, but no one else was talking about it. And so even after I'd written my first 3 books, um, I still was hesitant to write about the Hall of Records because one of my clients said, "Oh, you're talking about Akashic records," and I went, "I don't think that's the same thing." And so I took a course in Akashic
Records to make sure.
because I didn't think I knew what I knew, and because I'm claircognizant, and so I took a course in Akashic records, and I'm going, nope, it's not the same thing.
Mm-mm.
And so, and I didn't trust that, so I took 2 more courses. So I took 3 courses, and I can document this. Okay, I had certification in Akashic records from 3 different sources, and and it was like, no, this is not what I'm doing. And so I finally got it, and so I wrote the book. The book is out there, Hall of Records. And then a couple of years ago, the guidance was, you need to teach other people how to do this. I mean, when I have a client, I'm essentially teaching them how to do it. Anyone
Hmm.
can do it for themselves. um, And so it's not that I wasn't teaching, but I wasn't certifying people to become um, practitioners
Right.
where they could charge for that. So about 2 years ago, I followed that guidance and I started offering courses in the Hall of Records. And the very first practitioner group, probably two of them in the group said, I've been doing this my whole life. I knew that, I mean, it's common sense.
Right. Right.
One person, just the universe doesn't pick one human being and
No.
say, here you go. This is all the knowledge in the universe.
Right.
You're the only one that's got this. It's not the way things work. And so I was so relieved though to hear their version of the Hall of Records and how they were using it. And it was a little bit different from mine because my what I hear and what they heard is not always the same thing.
Right. Right.
And so so I have a few practitioners out there, and so that was the Hall of Records. And then light language came in for me around 2015. And light language just sort of took over everything. I've written 4 books about light language now. So I have 10 books total that are published and available on Amazon. But light language sort of took over everything for me. And and now, as you know, what I'm doing besides what I do, I'm
Mm.
also coordinating and hosting summits for Conscious Awakening Network, which is it's been fun for me because I'm meeting all kinds of. I mean, that's how I met you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's I've met so many amazing people that I wouldn't have met just doing my work, you
Right.
know. So I'm enjoying that immensely, and that brings us to November 7th, 2025. So, does that bring up any questions?
Now, we were talking about the silence. Okay. I think right now, since they not only know that the children are being born with higher frequency, they're also giving us an opportunity to take a pause because we're getting prepared for higher, heavier duty work, let's just say. So there is going to be coming shortly, from what I'm getting, a mass, like we thought there was a mass awakening before. No, this is a even higher mass awakening, shifting of energy that they're going to need people to be rested for. That's the best way I can explain it. Um, but it is scary when you have a team that's always with you, and you have I have arguments. It's not real arguments. It's more like um, I kind of enjoy the inter exchange. So it's more like a hobby for me. But anyway, yeah, they're it, but they're just saying just rest is what I've been told. Just rest right now. And I'm like, okay, when are you extending the 24-hour day to a 48-hour? Like, just so I could get some sleep. That's all. I just need sleep. Because they keep saying do this, do that, do this, do that. And I'm like, okay, so when am I going to do the last 3 things you said? And still have a life, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe that there's just because no, you're not the only one. There are many, and I even hear it from my students who have their team, and um, they're baffled
Stop.
on the quiet. So
Can
which
you
one is that one?
can you hear him barking?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Jet. Um,
Poor
somebody's
thing.
barking outside, and he's the big dog, and so he's got to respond. Uh, Stop! It's driving him nuts. So,
Is
um,
that the one you travel with?
yes, he's
Uh,
my constant companion.
oh, good, good.
Um, okay, go sit down. Go on. So there was a point in time when people were asking me in reference to what you just said about the silence. There was a point in time when people were saying they weren't getting information anymore. They felt like they weren't connected in anymore, and they were exhausted all the time. And the the awareness and guidance that I got, pretty much the same that you got, was that but a little different, because again our ears are different, right? We
Right,
hear
right.
things differently. And so another level of what you received was that we are doing so much work right now. We are in a third dimensional dense body, right? But outside of this third dimensional dense body, there are many versions of us out there, because there's no time and space, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are thousands of versions of us in different forms that are doing work. And some of those include battles.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those are healing work. Some of those are restructuring work. And so, what the guidance was, rest your human body, right? Because your human body is the only thing keeping you here right now. So you need to rest and take care of your human body. And that's also, they said, why a lot of people have gained so much physical weight,
Mm-hmm.
weighing ourselves down,
Right.
you know, bulking up.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people, psychologists, I guess you're going to say that extra weight is about protection.
Mm-hmm.
It's a barrier, right?
Right.
If you're stabbed or hit, they have to go through all these layers of adipose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus a really thin person.
Right.
And so a lot of people have gained a lot of weight,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard on our physical bodies when you gain weight, but
Yeah.
but tell that to our subconscious, early thing that likes to argue with people. Tell that to your subconscious that I don't want to gain all this weight, and your subconscious is going, you're going to need that, and you're going to thank me later.
Right.
But
And you're like, really? Because I'm getting a little tight in the pants here, I don't want
getting
to
up
buy
and
a
down, getting
size.
up and down, bending, it's not as easy as it used
No. No.
to. And so, yeah, so they just wanted to remind us that that we are conserving our energy. They're
Mm-hmm.
wanting us to conserve our energy, our physical energy, because we are doing a lot of work. It's not that we're just sitting here watching movies all day. And that's something that I do, and I've heard it more often now. I always called it a distraction, a mindless distraction.
Yes.
Because sometimes I find myself so immersed in spiritual work,
Mm-hmm.
that I, I don't think I ever get burnt out, but I do get to that point where of knowing that I need to detach now,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm doing all of this spiritual work in my third dimensional human body form and consciousness, while I'm thousands of me are out there doing the same thing. And that's a little bit much, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so sometimes I will put everything down, including the phone, and I'll turn on comedies, or
Yes.
British comedies, or love stories, or something
Brit-
that is, I don't,
British comedies. I love those.
yeah, something I don't have to think about, and
Nope.
I just sit and watch it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I have to do to maintain my sanity and my physical
Hmm.
physical composure, I guess you would say.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. There are times, not often, but there are times where I just totally disappear for the day. And I sit in my bed. I do what I have to in the morning, and I tell my partner, "Look, I don't want to be bothered. I get the have earphones for my TV. I plug them in. I sit there and just binge watch something that is just nonsense, but makes me laugh, makes me not be here, just in
Right.
fantasy world, you know. Um, Hallmark is a great channel for that stuff. All those love stories. I sit there, I'm like, yep, okay, gone. That Yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen next, but it's just like you immerse yourself into something that isn't what we would call work or job or journey. It's just a taking a breather,
Yeah.
taking a breather.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, no, British comedy is really good. I like British comedy. It's kind of quirky.
And
So
British detective shows they are they are so entertaining. And I also found an Italian detective show that's very, so yeah, I find that I have to do that distraction.
hmm hmm
Otherwise I get too serious. So I wanted to share, if I can, I wanted to share a transmission with
Sure,
people. And
absolutely.
for those of you that don't already know what light language is, um, Google it, buy one of my books, go on the internet, because I don't want to waste your time explaining what light language is. But and so it is codes and frequencies, downloads of information, and removals, removing anything that's distorted in your field that you no longer need, that no longer serves you. And so there's a lot that happens during light language. And what I'm finding with people who are transmitters who are doing this publicly and as a service is that we also bring in our other gifts into this. And so, because one of my gifts is to be able to shift people's perspectives through storytelling, through humor, through whatever, through energy work, that also comes in. And so while you're receiving transmissions from me, you may have thoughts, memories, feelings, even physical body sensations, and those are things that are coming up to be released. So if you get a pain in your shoulder and you all of a sudden, you put all your focus on that and say, what is she doing? Why am I getting a pain in my shoulder? You're missing the point here. It's calling to your attention that you have a distortion there that's being worked on, being released. And so whatever thoughts, images, or feelings that come up, just say release. Okay? Just
Hmm.
let it go. Because if you focus on it, then you're holding it in place, right? So I say relax, receive, and release. So we're going to hope that Jed is quiet for 5 seconds. Me ampa he endere de oi bibi hashta, en me embo he ampa kiel I. O ele mea ana ha o henchi e pea kala o he ti a. E hoi e mai an jelea shite ke alo ro o pi de ba. A te arare a lea o e ma. Release. Be ambo he andai ke enji e uto. De bi a an te ele e do loe na moe na a. Hani a chele a shida ko ikedarabu ina na riri eli I tue me che and na riri e te la kaieli bi ungoe ma release. Beha papaya anda dayele leke oko I maana a de lui tabayan cha lebe ako el ahato no unda ami e he popaya bai antataki el roong ge aui maa estera rai lebe awata ke uhin na maa andalare be e uki au maa ish on the mohun tabai antadari lia aka release ne ye ami handai anda tikea lo uko ihi maa. So they'll say release because I get that awareness that someone's holding their breath. Breathe, release. Um, so there was something else that they wanted me to remind people because you already know this. You already know everything that I'm saying, right? Because we're only experiencing remembrance.
Right.
That's what we're experiencing, and so they wanted me to remind everyone that we are transmitters of energy, whether we're speaking light language or whether we're doing an energy technique. You know,
Mhm.
we are humans are natural batteries. We are transmitters of energy. We're crystalline, right? And they
Mhm.
use crystals in watches and batteries, whatever. So we are crystalline beings and we are constantly emitting frequencies. So what I found, speaking personally, what I found is that, um, and it's not just me, but I can only speak for me. But what I found is that it doesn't matter what's coming out of my mouth, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I am emitting frequencies of healing, of alignment, codes of information. Um, and so everything else is just entertainment. And I had one of my clients had a daughter, a teenager, who was in the rebellious stage and just wasn't listening to anything. And she was in the dark, what they call the emo, the emo
You're right.
stage, right?
Mhm.
Where and I love black, but
I
she,
love black. Right.
yeah, so she
Yeah.
wore all black all the time, and she was very serious and very, very focused. And her mother thought something was wrong with her. And I'm thinking, you brought her to me, and I wear black all the time. But but anyway, her mother insisted that she needed to come have a session with me, and I said okay, but I don't. We're going to see what happens. You want to pay me for a session? I'll accept that money,
Right.
and bring her on. And sure enough, she brought this teenager who was glowering. What's the word? She was throwing daggers at me through her
Okay.
the
Hmm.
entire time. And her mother was in the other room because I found that a lot of times teenagers won't talk if the parents there.
Right.
So anyway, we were in my office, and I was talking to her, and about what I do, and I was asking her questions, and she would give me 3-word answers. She was sitting, I'm not telling you anything, and you're old, and why should I listen to you? And so at one point, though, because I'm a grandmother and an Aries, and so at one point I just looked at her and I said, honey, it doesn't matter. It honestly does not matter if you talk to me or not. And it doesn't matter if you do this technique that I'm asking you to do, these exercises, none of that matters. And I said, you're going to get it anyway. It doesn't matter, you know. You're going to get this anyway. You're going to get the energy. You're going to get the clearing. I don't care, how much you sit here with your arms crossed. You agreed, and see, this was the thing. law of free will, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm a strong believer in law of free will,
Me
and that
too.
when people come to you for healing, they have to agree to the healing, right?
Yeah.
But there's also using psychology on people and
Hmm.
teenagers in specific. And so I told her about the law of free will, and I saw this light come on in her eyes, like, oh, I got her now. She can't do shit to me.
Right.
So about the S word. And so I said,
That's okay.
so I, but I used a bit of grandma psychology because I
Mhm.
told her, I said, when your mother contacted me for this appointment and she asked you, would you go? You said yes.
Mhm. That's it.
And I said, so guess what? You agreed to come here and you agreed to receive this healing that I'm offering you. And I said, so you're going to get it anyway. I said, we can sit here for the next 15 minutes if you want and just look at each other because I don't want to waste your mom's time and money. I said, we can sit here and just, stare at each other if you want to, or we can talk or whatever you want to do. I said, but you're going to get this anyway, you know. And so she opened up and we started talking about just silly little things that she didn't think meant anything,
Right.
right?
Right.
As she was talking, there was energy being uh, broken down and reconfigured, right?
Right.
And so about 3 months down the road, her mom reached out to me and said, "You're not going to believe this kid has had a complete turnaround, and she's just amazing. She's excited about life. She's doing this and she's doing that, and we were afraid that she wouldn't graduate. She's doing great, because it
It's energy. No.
doesn't matter if we're just sitting here having coffee. If there's a soul agreement or even a conscious agreement that
Mm-hmm.
things are going to happen, then things happen.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, just for example, you walk into a place and you notice how people are paying attention to you. That's because you're shining your light so bright that it's actually calling them.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I get into a line in the supermarket, and somebody's always talking to me, and I'm just sitting there like, uh,
Stop.
and we all exchange energy just by that small talk,
Yeah.
just by being there. So.
My I wanted to share a quick story. One of my grandchildren,
Hmm.
when she was young in her teenage, she's 30 now, but when she was a teenager, she's very striking. She's gorgeous. She's just very striking, but not in the beautiful kind of way. It's just her energy is just
Right.
out there. And so, and she tries to play it down. She tries to be quiet and invisible. And,
Hmm.
and it really would irritate her because she would go somewhere and people would stare at her. And it really, really angered her. And so one day she came and she said, Grandma, I'm so sick of these people staring at me. Why are they staring at me all the time? And I just looked at her and smiled and I said, have you looked at yourself? Because she's biracial and she took it as an insult.
Mm.
She took it that people were judging her, and I said, have you looked at yourself? I said, you're gorgeous. And I said, there is a light in you. There is power in you.
Hmm.
And I said, they're seeing that. They don't know what they're seeing. And that's a lot of times that's why people stare at you, because it's like there's there's something about that person. Can't put my finger on it, but I'm going to stare at her for a good 30 minutes trying to figure it out
Right.
because there's just something there and I'm going to stare at her until I figure that out. And I
Hmm.
said, that's what they're doing. I said, they see you and they don't know what they're seeing, but they know that they're seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out she's the only one of my grandchildren that does anything near to what I do. She was the only one interested in spiritual, and she wasn't when she was growing up, but now she's the only one. She's a death doula, and
Mm-hmm.
she's a shamanic practitioner, in her own right. She wouldn't let me teach her anything because she had to do it herself, and um, but she's incredible, and so a lot of times when people are staring at you, they're not being rude. They're just trying to figure out, you know,
Why is that grabbing my attention? Why is
she's
that?
got, she's got something. I don't know what it is, but she's got something. And yeah, so people aren't always being rude. It's actually a compliment, and when people do me like that, I just smile at them, you know, or I start talking to them.
Exactly.
It
And
really throws them off, if they're if they don't have good intentions, that really throws them off.
oh, definitely, definitely throws them off because they're like, wait, she noticed. Oh, okay, I can't do what I was planning to do. She noticed. She's getting to know me now. She's might be putting a name to me and all that other
Yeah,
stuff. So,
because that's the thing that people don't really understand is that one of the gifts that I have is I see people. I mean, I see people and I
mhm,
know who they are and what they are from the minute that I have contact with them, whether it's internet or what, I have the gift of knowing who a person is, but the the opposite side of that is that I accept people for who they are.
right,
I don't care who they are. I don't care what they're doing. That's the agreement they made when they came here. And in the
mhm,
next incarnation, they may be Saint Mary, you know. In this carnation, they're total crap. As far as how they treat, not, as far as
right,
how
right,
they treat people, they're
right.
users, they're,
Hmm.
what narcissist users, whatever. But in the next incarnation, I mean, that, in their one of their other incarnations,
Right,
they may be Saint John, Saint Mary. So who am I to judge that? You know,
exactly.
this is the part they came to play in the world that I'm physically in right now. And so I see everybody for who they are. I accept them for who they are, but then I make that decision on whether or not I want to play in the sandbox with them, right?
Right.
But I see them for who they are and I accept them for who they are. There's no judgment, you know. And
That's
so I have the habit of saying I don't judge people, but I do have an awareness. And
yes.
so you know, my awareness is usually pretty true, but I just accept people because, you know, I've done some dastardly stuff in my other life experiences. I know because I've looked at them, and we've played all the parts. We have existed in every form that there is, and
Hmm.
we existed in every culture, every race, we've been animal, plant, sand,
Hmm.
extraterrestrial, human, we horse, we've been everything. And so people forget that when they start judging other people.
Hmm.
You know,
And it's just, the biggest rule is don't judge, right? Love everyone as they are. It's unconditional love. There's absolutely no reason why, just because I don't like what they're doing at this moment, they may not like what I'm doing.
I might
And
have killed them last time I was with them.
yeah, you know,
I might have killed and tortured them last time I was in physical body with them.
yeah,
So who
a little fire here, there, who knows?
yeah,
So yeah, yes, exactly. But you honor who they are today as they are today,
yeah.
and then take it from there. So we're coming to the end.
Did we talk that long? I can
Yes,
babble on.
indeed. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
It's great. Thank you, Patricia. Is there anything else you want to say to our audience?
Just to be kind to yourselves right now in this particular time. Just be kind to yourselves. Listen to your intuition, listen to your inner knowing, and it's never wrong. You could do what I do, just tell them to throw in some words that you're not familiar with. And then you know it's not coming from your ego. Because I have so many people that will say, I'm just making this up. No,
Mm-hmm.
you're not, because you can't make up something that you've never experienced.
Exactly.
You can't. You have to have a source of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And so just be kind to yourself and trust that you know what you know. Don't let somebody tell you that you don't know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Very true. Very true. Thank you very much. And thank you to our audience. And of course, Patricia, anytime you want to come back, please do. And as I always end my shows, love you.
Love
Bye.
you all. Thank you, Glenda.